CIS Deductions? Didn't see them coming? Jason, 38, had cement dust in his hair, dry mortar on his boots, and a back that sounded like popcorn when he stretched. Another 50-hour week done. The van was packed, the tools were rattling, and all he could think about was a hot shower and a greasy takeaway. Maybe a beer too, if the corner shop had any cold ones left. He parked outside his flat in Home, tossed his gloves onto the dashboard, and opened his banking app with the same quiet anticipation as opening exam results. Ping. His contractor had paid in. Except, something was off. 180 short. Again. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, refreshed the app like it might magically correct itself. Jason scratched his head. Maybe they took out site cleaning costs, or extra PPE, or, I don't know, the Queen's share? He chuckled at his own joke, even though it wasn't funny. This had been happening for months now. Every Friday, the numbers didn't add up, but he always found a reason to ignore it. Maybe he was being overcharged for materials. Maybe his hours weren't logged right. Maybe it was just contractor maths. You know, that magical world where you work your ass off and somehow earn less every time. He wasn't about to argue. Not tonight. Not after lugging bricks and mixing cement under Manchester drizzle all week. He swung by the chip shop, ordered his usual fish, large chips, curry sauce on the side, and tapped his card without looking at the total. Treat yourself, he mumbled, trying to drown out the feeling of being shortchanged again. Back home, he changed into joggers, flipped on the telly, and sank into the sofa with dinner balanced on one knee. He scrolled Instagram with the other hand. Everyone seemed to be doing better than him. Flashy vans, new drills, lads on holiday in Benidorm. He shook his head. Maybe I should have been a YouTuber, he muttered. He noticed a DM from a mate asking if he'd started using any apps for invoicing yet. Jason stared at it, thought about replying, then decided to ignore it. He didn't need apps, he needed more hours. More jobs, less admin. He didn't realize yet that what he really needed was answers. Because while Jason was cracking jokes and crunching chips, someone else was quietly shaving off a chunk of his money legally. And the name for it? CIS Deductions. But Jason didn't know that yet. Not tonight. Tonight, he was just knackered and 180 lighter than he should be. The dog, Hammer, was buzzing. Friday night. United had won, the jukebox was churning out 80s bangers, and Jason had just slammed down his second pint. Dave slid into the booth opposite him, already halfway through his chips before he even said, "All right." Jason tore into a scampi fry, still mulling over his pay. "Weird one, mate," he said between bites. "Got paid today, but again about 180 quid short." Dave looked up. "What? Like short from your invoice?" "Yeah, been happening for months. Every week it's a bit off. Just assumed it's site charges or admin fees or, you know, whatever." Dave blinked. "Wait, hold on. You invoice directly, yeah? You're self-employed?" "Course I am. And your contractor? They're a company?" "Yeah." Dave put down his pint. "Mate, you're getting CIS'd." "Getting what now?" CIS Deductions. Construction industry scheme. HMRC makes contractors take tax off you before you even see it. Jason frowned. "That's a thing?" Dave leaned in, now properly alarmed. "It's a massive thing. If you're not registered, they take 30% of your pay. If you are registered, it's 20%. Either way, that money goes to HMRC. Jason's face tightened. "So, you're saying that missing bit every week, that's tax?" "Exactly. It's not a charge, it's not site fees, it's your tax up front. And if you're not registered with HMRC under CIS, they're taking the higher rate." Jason sat back in his chair like someone had just unplugged him. "You're joking." "I wish. I've been through it. Last year I nearly missed rent until someone clued me in. The good news is if you've been paying 30% and you should have been on 20%, or if you've overpaid full stop, HMRC owes you a refund." Jason blinked slowly as if replaying the last 6 months of paydays in his head. Wait. I've been handing over all that money without knowing?" Dave nodded grimly. "Yeah. And if you've not been submitting tax returns, HMRC doesn't even know to give it back." Jason rubbed his forehead, the weight of weeks, maybe months of loss hitting him all at once. "Bloody hell, Dave. No one ever said anything. I thought I was just getting rinsed on fuel." "Nope," said Dave. "You're getting rinsed by the system, but only if you let it." Jason looked down at his phone, opened his bank app again, staring at his last few payments like they'd turned radioactive. Dave finished his pint and leaned in one last time. Get yourself on the HMRC website, mate. Register for CIS and get that refund claim going. You're not broke, you're just uninformed. Jason let out a long breath. Well, that's just bloody brilliant. Dave clapped him on the back. Better late than never. Jason got home around 9 p.m, boots still dusted with dried cement. He sat on the edge of his sofa and opened his laptop like it was a crime scene, something he didn't want to touch, but knew he had to. First stop, HMRC's website. He blinked. Rows of bullet points, hyperlinks, downloadable PDFs, and something about gross payment status. Right, he muttered. So, CIS, Construction Industry Scheme. Contractors deduct money from my pay for tax? A YouTube video popped up, CIS for Dummies, why you're getting less than you should. Within 3 minutes, Jason's world turned upside down. Turns out, CIS is a prepaid tax, not the full picture. It's like sending HMRC a down payment each week, whether you know it or not. And since Jason hadn't registered as a subcontractor with HMRC, his contractor was deducting 30% instead of the standard 20%. He groaned. So I've been overpaying for months? Next rabbit hole. Claimable expenses. Jason learned he could deduct things like protective clothing, mileage between sites, tools he'd bought, even part of his mobile phone bill. He looked around the room. His battered high-vis jacket was hanging over a chair. His steel-toe boots were near the door, 89.99 from last winter. His van? He filled the tank twice a week. None of that had been accounted for. He pulled out a shoebox from the whole cupboard labeled receipts, kinda. It was chaos. Scrunched up petrol station slips, hand-scribbled notes, the occasional Greg's wrapper. No judgment. This, he sighed, might be the messiest tax office in the country. Jason realized that without filing correctly, he might never see the refund he was due, potentially thousands. And if he didn't sort this by the next tax year, the money would just sit there. HMRC wouldn't chase him to give it back. He took a breath and started jotting down questions in a notepad. Am I officially registered? How do I file if I've never done a return? Do I need an accountant, or can I DIY it? Then he scribbled the most important one. How much am I actually owed? The weight of confusion began to shift into quiet determination. He closed the HMRC tab and opened a new one. Best CIS Accountants for Subcontractors UK. This wasn't how Jason expected to spend his Friday night. But if he wanted his money and some peace of mind, he had to stop ignoring the fine print and start treating himself like the business he was. And maybe, just maybe, the shoebox would become a spreadsheet someday. Jason sat on the edge of his bed, phone balanced between shoulder and cheek, tapping notes into his cracked screen tablet. On the other end, Gemma, certified tax advisor, CIS specialist. He'd found her through a local Facebook group for tradesmen in Manchester. Her profile picture had her holding a cup of tea next to the words, "We fight for your refund." Sounded promising. She walked him through the basics in clear English. First off, she said, we'll register you properly as a subcontractor. That drops your CIS deduction rate from 30% to 20% going forward. Jason scribbled. Next, she continued, we'll list all valid expenses. Fuel, tools, PPE, phone, even part of your home internet if you're doing admin work at home. Jason raised an eyebrow. All that counts? Absolutely. You've likely left a lot of money on the table. Then came the part that made him pause. Based on what you've told me and the income range you gave, you'll probably do a rebate of around £200 for this tax year. Jason blinked like she'd spoken in Morse code. Wait, you mean the government actually gives money back? Gemma chuckled. Only if you ask for it properly. You've prepaid more tax than you owe, and they won't chase you to return it. He shook his head slowly. All those weeks eating instant noodles, saying no to new work boots, dodging petrol fill-ups till the red light blinked while the money he needed was just sitting there. Gemma assured him they'd file everything before the self-assessment deadline, and that next year's return would be smoother now that he was properly set up. Jason exhaled. For the first time in months, he felt not cheated, but in control. When they ended the call, he looked at his shoebox of receipts and gave it a respectful nod. It wasn't just a box of chaos anymore, it was evidence. Proof. A second chance. He had a new folder on his tablet titled CIS Tax Stuff. Touch nothing unless you're sober. Progress. Jason was halfway through buttering a toast when his phone buzzed. Text from HMRC. Your tax refund of $112 has been processed. He blinked, looked again, then squinted, as if the phone might be lying. "No way," he whispered. He reread it 5 times before letting out a laugh that startled his kettle mid-boil. For the first time since he picked up his first trowel, the taxman had paid him. He opened WhatsApp and messaged Dave. "You were right. Pints on me. 2, actually." Dave replied with a single gif. Someone throwing tax forms into the air like confetti. Jason couldn't help himself. He danced in his kitchen. Nothing graceful, just a victorious side shuffle in socks. A few weeks later, Jason stood on site, cuppa in hand, raincoat flapping in the wind. His mug? A gift from Dave. Big, red, proudly stamped with CIS Master. He smirked every time he took a sip. Since the refund, he'd set calendar reminders for tax deadlines, created a spreadsheet for receipts, even convinced 2 lads on site to book consultations. One of them joked, "Matt, you're like a tax therapist now." Jason shrugged, just tired of giving HMRC tips they didn't ask for. He remembered what he used to think that CIS was some mystery deduction, some fee for, as he'd once put it, letting you use the loo on site. Now, he knew better. He knew it was his money, he'd just never asked for it back. And the difference wasn't just in the bank, it was in the mindset. He no longer worked blind, he worked smart. Moral, don't just work the job, learn the system. If you're self-employed in construction, CIS deductions aren't the end of your income, they're the beginning of your tax story. Call to action. Like stories that help you earn smarter? Follow for more. Subscribe before tax season sneaks up. Be like Jason, file smart, not late.